Perfect. So our recording is on. Let me make sure that we can see our slides. I'm going to put the link to the slides in the chat, and you will see me putting the link multiple times, but you should also be able to see the slide, the main slide, the first slide right on your page. This is our introduction for the Planning a Lesson project, and we are going to jump into it almost immediately. Here we go. To give you a quick overview of our session and what we hope to do today is to spend around 15 minutes on quick introductions and just kind of giving you an idea what we are all about. And then we are going to have a presentation that's going to be facilitated by Olga, who is one of our facilitators for the PAL project, and she's going to tell you more about that very soon. We are also going to have a Q&A and a wrap-up, but as part of the actual presentation and activities, we also are excited to take you to breakout rooms where you will have a chance to do a bit more discussion and exploration as well. Now, as you will see through our list of guests for today, we have Olga, who is the project lead from AlphaPlus. And then also we have Leila from Preparatory Training Programs, Smita from Toronto District School Board, Georgina from Ottawa Carleton District School Board or School Board. I'm sorry, Georgina, I'm messing this one up. Ottawa Catholic School Board, I believe. Joe is also from the same school board. And we also have John who is from the literacy group in Kitchener-Waterloo. So a fantastic group of instructors, supporters who have worked with Olga in the working group to make PAL possible. Now, also you have me, Monica from AlphaPlus. I have been with the organization for many, many years, and I love to do our showcases, showcasing what programs, organizations, individuals are doing in our field in Ontario and beyond. And we also have an interpreter, Becky, with us. There may be also Kim, another interpreter joining us. But for now, Becky can wave, so you will know who Becky is. And then as you're joining and getting used to our environment, you may see Kim here as well. All right. Now, we have been doing Zoom sessions for a while, but just a very quick reminder and actually a quick note that if you haven't updated your Zoom, do that after this session because there are many new features. Zoom actually looks slightly different now, even than the screen captures I have. It has tiny different icons, different options and layouts as well. And you can even customize your toolbar in Zoom. So if you haven't done this already, when we finish the session today, when we close Zoom, open your Zoom application on your computer, click on the tiny icon in the top right corner, and there you will see an option to update your Zoom. I really strongly suggest that because it gives you more features and options to use. But in the meantime, just a quick reminder that we are sharing our slides, we are sharing our screens with you. So the videos may be moving around and they may be smaller than you want. So there is an option there to adjust your screen when you are in the video mode, but make sure that your viewing is set up to gallery. Only then you have that tool available for you to move to the left and right and enlarge the videos you're looking at. Another tip, if you want to have a pin privilege, and pin privilege basically allows you to pin the videos on your screen so they do not disappear, they don't move as much. Let me know, just put it in the chat and I will ensure that I enable that for you. That feature has to be enabled for each specific person. So that's why I'm asking you to let me know if that's something you would like me to use. Now, chat is our #1 place where we will be using space for questions, feedback, ideas. So we really invite you and encourage you to use chat to say hello to us, say hello to others, put your feedback and ideas. And as you can see, I just reposted a link to the slides. So if you want to open them in a separate tab or window, you will have a link to do that. Now it's time to welcome everyone again and begin with acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improve our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. Now, the screen you see, the picture you see on the screen, it is a screenshot from a beautiful tool called Native Land Digital that allows you to go in and learn more about the different territories, languages, and treaties of First Peoples in your region and around the world. And we did put a link to it in the slides. So if you ever want to click on that, you will be able to do that after the session as well. Now, a bit more information about during this session. So we have a lot of different activities for you, but our plan is to give you a bit of a warm-up activity, and Olga is going to guide you through that. We will discuss how and why the PAL working group happened. We'll talk about the 3 stages of lesson planning and explore that with you together. There will be a sneak peek at the website and resources that are coming up. Breakout activity to get you involved and try some of the resources we are discussing. And then we hope to have some reflections from the working group members. So they will be sharing with us some of the feedback, the aha moments, and so on. Now, before we jump, again, feel free to put your questions or feedback in the chat. And now I'm going to hand it over to Olga, who will take us to the next steps.
Thank you very much, Monica. My name is Olga Herman, and I am so delighted to be here with you this afternoon to share with you a little bit of what the Planning a Lesson working group has worked on for the last 8 months or so. PAL, the little acronym for Planning a Lesson, seemed apropos. I'd like to start with a warm-up activity. Give me a moment to give you a little bit of direction on how we're going to put something in the chat. I'd like to try something called the chat waterfall or cascade. The whole purpose of coming together as the PAL working group was to look at lesson planning from the lens of the new type of reality we have now that we are post-pandemic, and people feel a lot more able to teach online, to teach hybrid.
Yeah. Well, then she was showing me the.
Sorry, Olga, I just muted.
No problem. So the PAL working group, what we did is we started with a lot of our questions, which helped shape what we co-created and co-developed. So I'd like you to start with the question we started off with in one of our first meetings, and think about what's involved in planning a lesson that flows. Maybe think about 1 to 3 things and think about it first. Let's give ourselves a chance to think. And then on the count, I'm going to give you like about 10 seconds to think about it. And then on the count of 3, when I say 3, if you could just start typing, but don't click send. When I say send, that's when we'll all see everybody's answers. So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to think about what's involved in planning an LBS lesson that flows. You should be typing away and getting prepared now for that send moment. Everybody look at your chat. It's quite satisfying when it all comes down the cascade. 3, 2, 1, send.
Oh, wow.
Okay, there's a lot coming down there.
Yeah.
A waterfall of ideas. So thrilled about this. Let me take a look as you're doing this. Oh, Tiffany, you missed the question. The question is on our slide. What's involved in planning an LBS lesson that flows? Okay, I'm seeing people having said the opening, the conclusion, thinking about even steps in a lesson. Spiraling planning is involved. Multi-sensory, integrated, participatory, and diverse. Love it, because that is engagement in a nutshell. discussion with learners about their experiences. Very much appreciate that. That is that learner voice popping out already. Knowing the level of understanding of your learners. That's like a pre-lesson understanding that is quite a key element of knowing how to plan and for whom you're planning. Specific order to do things, very practical logistics, encouraging learners to be comfortable, building on previous skills and scaffolding. Oh, that scaffolding is a teaching a gem, isn't it? Preparing your learners to have that support they need before they can do it on their own. Flexibility and fun. Yeah, let's not forget that, especially because it's a plan. It's not set in stone. It's a plan. Flow requires a lot of consideration of the plan Bs. I really appreciate that because other things could happen. Goals, Diana, absolutely. A good plan, authentic documents. Authentic is an important piece as well. Organized, management, content and fun. Oh my goodness. I wish you were all in the working group. This is amazing. Goals, needs, interactive, scaffolding. Oh, such great teaching moments and learning new things. Okay, so now we had the first part of the warm-up. I'd like to go to the next slide where we're going to fine-tune the question. We're going to ask a more grounded question. We were thinking about planning, but now let's think about what the actual lesson that flows feels like, looks like. We're going to do a cascade again, everybody, which means I'm going to give you a moment to think and type without sending. How do you yourself know your lesson is flowing? What are indicators of flow? Take a moment, type out for about 10 seconds in the chat, and then I'll give the direction to send. How do you know your lesson is flowing? Okay. Everybody, I'm going to now count backwards. 3, 2, 1, send. Woo!
Loving the participation.
Okay, now I'm going to scroll back so I can see what people are saying means that the lesson is flowing. Okay, there's aha moments. Everyone is engaged, relaxed. I really like that word relaxed because that means that the learning is not onerous. Thoughtful questions from the learners, I take it, as well as hopefully from the practitioners. Learner has aha moments. Thanks, Susan. Excitement from comprehension. Yes, there's a sense of satisfaction, isn't there? Feedback and reception from the audience. Participation and engagement. Understanding, comprehension is there. People are actually following the objectives, reaching goals, engagement, self-reflection provides positive. Yeah, there's moments of self-reflection that come about as you're engaged and it's flowing. And there's enthusiasm. The group runs itself. Oh, I love that, Christine. That's wonderful. Learners are engaged. Visual, oral participation, attention is there. Wow. People are asking questions. They're interested and relaxed. Thank you, everybody. There's one more question in this flow of questions that will lead us to discussing the topic at hand today. So we talked about planning for flow. We talked about understanding what flow is. Now let's shift our focus to considering teaching with technology for learning, technology for learning. How is flow impacted by technology? Just going to give you a few seconds. What happens to flow when you're teaching with technology to learn about technology. I'll give you about 10 seconds or so to type it up. And then we'll do our cascade. Okay, everybody, I'm going to count 3, 2, 1, send. Oh, it's coming down the, wow, it's Niagara Falls here. Wow. Let's just see what's going on.
And as Olga is reviewing those, I'm going to just say we're going to try to summarize them and share them with you afterwards as well. So you will see all this feedback you're providing.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm looking at the inability to use technology required could actually impact flow right there. It slows everything down. Technical considerations, Christine, yes. Tech issues, oh, you know it. We're lucky we have none today so far, fingers crossed. Flow is interrupted, distractions, software updates, oh, you bet. There can be bottlenecks. Georgina, we'll talk about more about bottlenecks to that flow. The lesson needs to flow more slowly to ensure understanding and allow for questions. Allison, that is brilliant because you're adding a complexity to your facilitating or teaching that hasn't been there before. And that is something that is often not given enough validity. It's not teaching in the same way. It's actually, depending on also your program delivery format, it introduces a lot of issues or little nuances that slow things down. Students are at different levels of technical ability, absolutely. So you need to make sure that you're tending to all those abilities in a way. Interaction is not immediate if it's a little bit slowed down by technology or there's a lag or other issues. Depending on the teacher and the audience, it depends even the facility that the teacher, the adult educator has. Oh, there's so many wonderful things here. Exploration, questions to know more. It helps visually, Lillian said, but hands-on works better. Also, they need more assistance. So yes, another thing to note is that not only are you facilitating, but you're troubleshooting. You're troubleshooting practical, technical things, but you're also troubleshooting, teacher troubleshooting, seeing who does not have that level to actually take on the task and perhaps adding a scaffold. So that's wonderful. We did the warm-up activity. The next slide that Monica will take us to is the first slide I ever showed, the Planning a Lesson Working Group. It was the picture of the day, which is a strategy for starting a lesson or starting a meeting. And I asked them to tell me what they see, what this makes them think, and what this makes them feel. And the question was, for us as well, is this lesson flowing? What do you all think? This is not going to take too long. Is this lesson flowing when you see a Zoom window like this? Go ahead, everybody. Cascade away. There's probably not, no. How do you know if someone is there? I see that Jose said no. No background chat. Yeah, we don't even see a chat there. No faces, no expression. Joe Spencer, thank you for, it depends. Sometimes learners mute themselves while listening and do not have their camera on, but still participate thoughtfully. We don't know what goes on in this beautiful magic black box here. We see we see that those black boxes and initials. So I'm going to go to the next slide and show you what our working group said, very akin to your likely no, probably not responses. We did it as a Jamboard, and you can see that they said things like, I see online learning without what I would assume to be low participation and engagement. I think breaking the ice is harder behind the screen. I feel distance. I feel like I'm like making a policy about having cameras on. So the cameras on off debate is something we looked at, and also something that impacts in how you feel about how engaged your class is, because those visual signals are no longer there. So this was our PAL working group first couple of questions and visuals we looked at to prime us to work together as a group. Let me tell you a bit about what we did after we did these few things that we started off with you as well. Next slide, please.
Olga, before we just move on, Simone has raised her hand, and I'm wondering if we can address.
Yes, please.
Yeah? Go ahead, Simone.
So when I look at this, we don't know if these are people that are maybe uncomfortable being on the screen. They could be in an environment that's not tidy. So there could be many factors that cause them to turn off their screen. And it may not even be that they're not engaged. Maybe they're embarrassed about maybe the setting that they're in, or just uncomfortable to see themselves on the screen or to be seen. So we don't know. But on the flip side, we don't even know if they're attending. So I have and just to let you know, it's hard for me to type that in the chat because ASL is my first language, which is why I preferred to just comment by turning my camera on and signing.
Well, that comment is very welcome in the format it was given. Thank you, Simone. Those are very real considerations. We are actually talking about LBS adult learners who have responsibilities, realities we might not know about or we might have an idea about that prevent them from having their cameras on. And later I will share with you on the website that's being developed that cameras on off discussion with a very thoughtful lens of knowing the learner realities. Thank you for that comment, because that is top of mind for a lot of educators. So we did some of these warm-up activities together. You got a sense of what the PAL working group started to ask themselves and discuss with each other. And I want to tell you a little bit about how and why we came together as the Planning a Lesson working group. Here is our mighty group of 6. Our online collaboration felt like a virtual staff room, and you'll see Georgina, myself at the top row, John in the golf shirt, Joe in, I believe it's a hoodie, Layla on the lower left-hand side, and Smita. Wonderful, wonderful family they've become as we've planned and co-developed resources to share with you and to help you in your lesson planning journey. Next slide, please. So the Skills for Success initiative, the funding, enhancing digital delivery, is where this project started its first original grain. There was a phase 1. As the project lead, I went out to the field across Ontario through focus groups, but I wanted to give you the background. As we've said, there was a pandemic pivot. There was an urgent pivot to online training due to the pandemic guidelines. So everybody, unless they were mailing things to their learners, they were online with their learners in some form. New tools, skills, and approaches were developed or were starting to become a reality for the adult educator in LBS. And there was a steep learning curve for both LBS practitioners and learners, dare I say. What are instructors' needs now? That was kind of my thinking as somebody who wanted to go out in the field post-emergency remote teaching to identify current realities, needs, and opportunities that could possibly inform the co-creation of useful and relevant resources. So I'm going to tell you a little bit in the next slide about I think I have a slide coming up. Yes, about who was engaged in phase one. I spoke with 23 LBS practitioners, a couple of tutors as well. There were 5 focus groups conducted and 7 one-on-one consultations, again with practitioners, 9 different literacy programs, which are listed on this slide. I also had some conversations with 9 program administrators so I can get a sense of program delivery choices post-pandemic. So there are different program delivery formats. Some people are fully synchronously online teaching. Some people are doing hybrid, a little online, a little bit in class during the week, then a one-on-one, perhaps even some asynchronous models. Next slide, please. So one of the most notable repeated things that came to be as a result of the focus group questioning was people really lamented the new normal. The new normal meaning not having as much time with your teaching peers. You can see from these quotes, we're a lot more isolated as instructors. We're kind of siloed off from each other a bit more. When we meet, we collaborate perhaps on Zoom, and it's less a lesson planning activity that we're meeting about, more administrative, less lessony, they said. Teacher collaboration is down because often people meet via remote MS Teams or Zoom, and they'll say, sometimes I'll meet other teachers on Teams. We don't do it every day. So it's not that ability between classes or during lunch to always be in that staff room. So that was missing. Next slide, please. As they spoke about missing the staff room, there were other reflections about lesson planning, the challenges, the realities, and the variability within programs with students and that sort of thing. And they were the people consulted in the focus groups said things like, I'm still working on how to do that in an online environment, how to deliver a lesson. Oh, you know what? I'm not a creator. I'm a facilitator, so I don't know how to create a good lesson plan. Then there were people who said, you know, I don't know what to do. Sometimes a great lesson with one group bombs with another group. And another challenge, especially if you're incorporating digital technology into the mix of delivery, was trying to build learner autonomy as you create lessons, and that's difficult. So taking some of these really repeated insights from the focus groups to heart, we came up with what we could do next. Monica, the next slide. So, maybe I jumped the gun. Let me tell you, there was a really wonderful quote that I pulled out of the focus groups. And it really was a reflective insight that talked about how technology is really integrated into everything. This quote, I'm going to give you a moment to take a look at it. The crux of why I chose this was that when we look at the skills for success circle to the left-hand side and the 9 skills identified in the skills for success, as you could see, they stand a little apart, but there's a circle kind of joining them all. There is also in the official description of the skills for success that they're often overlapping and combined. But what this practitioner said was we really need to think about the whole idea of teaching in a digital environment almost three-dimensionally. We have those other 8 domains and they all interact with each other, but they sit on this pillow of technology, is what he said. Indeed, the key line, but digital skills are today reading and writing and numeracy. It's all integrated. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show you how a colleague of mine, Christine, and I here at AlphaPlus took the notion of making the skills for success model a little more learner-centered by looking at the notion of when we are in a digital world, what we do with our technology really in the working sphere, in the learning sphere, and in our life sphere, it makes what learner-centered means a little different. You can see that an integrated and contextualized instruction in a digital world means that you are learner-centered when you honor the fact that our digital world really does call for integrated and contextualized instruction rooted in digital practices. Digital practices, fancy way of saying what we do with technology. So if you look at the learning portion, accessing library services, that's a digital practice. That's what I do with some technology. I prepare to pass online tests. That's a digital practice. In the working world, I search and apply for jobs online. That's a digital practice. So framing it from a digital practice perspective is very helpful to lesson planning. Next slide, please. So phase 1 and a little bit of an overview of how to approach the idea of learner-centeredness and skills building. We thought, based on what was said in phase 1, it was time for a grassroots virtual staff room. And let's talk about phase 2. We chose lesson planning. Why? It is a practical, relatable way of exploring the realities of digital delivery in a blended learning context. When I say lesson plan to LBS instructors, practitioners, they're like, oh yeah, you could be lesson planning on the fly, you could be lesson planning in detail, but you're doing it somehow, whether it's here or on paper or on your on the screen. It's also a springboard from which to view the common challenges and opportunities inherent in integrating technology. That means that as we did in our warm-up activity, we started to really come to see that there were some challenges inherent in adding that digital integration piece. So thinking more purposefully about it is a good thing, I suspect. Next, a planned lesson and its successful execution or mis-execution, as it were, is like a microcosm of on-the-ground realities that require fine-tuning and creative teaching solutions. Here, I'm going to share my bias with you. We can bring AI in and help us with lesson planning, but that fine-tuning and creative teaching solution piece and teacher wisdom rests with us. We can see our learners. We know when they're struggling. AI can't foresee that. We see it in real time, whether it's online or in the class. Next slide, please. How we explored the intricacies of lesson planning. What we considered and what you've started considering is lesson flow, the flow of a lesson, the on-the-ground realities of teaching LBS learners in a new teaching landscape where technology is here to stay. And low-level learners understand this too. Engagement and active learning was also a key piece. Active learning means not sitting listening to the teacher. It's actually discussing things with others, working on something together, working on some activities, that link the learning. So transitions within the flow of activities chosen by the instructor actually add to skills building. Think about discussion, think about critical thinking, think about problem solving. When you have learners come together, whether it's in pairs, small groups, or in a general group, they are building their skills, those 21st century skills of collaboration, adapting, problem solving, etc. We also felt it was very key for to view our adult learners who come with experience, complex lives where they problem solve on a daily basis from a learner's strengths lens, so that they're bringing their strengths, and what we're helping them do is hone skills that might be needing some honing. And we spoke briefly about learners' voices, listening to our learners. We did some action and research. We'll talk about that later. Next slide, please. So the idea of flow, I'm going to give you a second, not a second. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to view this slide. Flow, optimal engagement, which many of you spoke to, knowing when it's happening, is when there's a balance between challenge and skill. And that's the optimal engagement. Within the purple area of optimal engagement, it's everything you described in our action and awareness merge, no worry of failure. There's no self-consciousness. People are asking questions. Time distorts. Activities are meaningful, and you're fully immersed and proud of what you're doing. Time flies when you're having fun learning. That's the holy grail. If the level is too high, or if you're too overwhelmed by technology, you're in the red zone. It's frustrating, you're anxious, you're fearful. That's not where to be. And below, in the blue, being a little blue and bored and apathetic, that's when you're doing something that is not a challenge at all. The learning is not happening. So we're trying to find that sweet spot and thinking about that spot. And I really want you to pay attention to that little stepped up, jagged arrow line. Every time we transition to a next activity, we may take it down or up or stay in flow. So that's what we're trying to figure out, how to stay in that flow. Next slide, please. So the PAL working group decided that we would look at lesson planning in the 3 large stages, not only the lesson plan itself, but anticipating challenges pre-lesson before the lesson begins, and then planning for learning and lesson flow during the lesson. And then, very importantly for the adult learner who wants to see the application of what they're learning, taking that learning post-lesson beyond the classroom into the real world. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek. Pardon me, I'm going to have a sip of water before I give you a sneak peek to the PAL website. So let me just share my screen in a moment here. Okay. Let me know if you can see the website. Yes, thank you, Monica. So the working group did a lot of work together, discussions, tasks, looked at research, had very generative discussions, created lesson plans, thought about challenges. But we thought, instead of putting it all in a report that would get filed away somewhere, we'd have a little bit of a playground that was in the form of a website. So I'd like to take you on a short tour. It's, I'd say, 80% ready to go, but there's little graphic things that have to go in there. But I'd like you to know that the intention is for this website to be part of that conversation or that process that the PAL working group took. Questions are key, the questions that we looked at. So who's it for? It's a companion that's like a conversation with a teaching peer. It's by practitioners for practitioners. A new way of looking at the concept of lesson planning, an opportunity to reflect on your practice, a learner-centered, strengths-based approach. You'd see the tabs. There's something about the project, the working group. See, I guess it might be a little slow. I'm in rural Ontario. You'd see a little bit about us, the lens we use that you're starting to be familiar with. Active learning. Our priorities were a learner-centered approach, a strength-based perspective, purposeful digital integration. We tended to learners' voices in our planning, reflection and teaching for learning, spotlighting skills transfer beyond the lesson. I'm very excited to show you there's a pre-lesson section. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but because you'll do some work pre-lesson reflection yourself. Lesson, we talked about engagement and active learning in our project, the flow concept that you were just exposed to. We chose a model that really resonated for adult learnings, BOPS lesson planning. We talked about digital integration. We did action research. We have some guiding questions, and I'll show you also that there is all the PAL resources. We could talk about this a little later after the next, but there's five key flagship resources, and I'll show you those a little later in our talk, and about 30 other, in total, about 30 resources to share with you all once it's all ready. I'm going to stop sharing. Simone has a question, I see.
Hello. On the PAL website that you just showed us, I am wondering, do they include videos? And if they do the videos have any captions or are they accessible?
There will be one video on the landing page that is going to be created at that's the last thing I'm creating, so as to guide people through the navigation of the site and how to use it for the purposes of an instructor. That is a very important piece. And it has to be, once everything is there, it'll be very instructive as to how to best use it. So we were really mindful to create a resource that could be we're going to jump on and all I want are the resources in that last tab, or I want to go through the flow process of what the PAL working group asked themselves. I want to see why they came up with things. So it'll be
recording in progress.
So it'll be hopefully for you all a chance to kind of extend the discussion. Even though it's going to be a silent colleague, it'll be a colleague that hopefully will give you some engaging questions and some insights that the working group came up with that will be useful, as well as some resources that you can apply right away as well. Thank you for that question. Now, perhaps we can go back to the slides because let's just see, Monica, thank you. Okay, so one of the key PAL resources is the guiding questions. So if you recall, I said we're going to have, we had a question about pre-lesson. There'll be a section about pre-lesson, lesson, post-lesson. We have this PAL guiding questions resource. I'm wondering if I should open it for you. Actually, I will open it for you. I'm just going to go back onto the website. I'm going to share my screen, pardon me. So There we go, and we'll share. So the PAL guiding questions. Oops, I'm not sharing yet. I see it. There we go. That you able to see?
Yes.
Thank you. So you can see that we had part one was pre-lesson stage guiding questions that we came up with. So the whole website and everything we talked about is condensed and crystallized into this document of really engaging reflective questions or questions for reflection, both for practitioners. There's a pre-lesson, start thinking about, and then you can do a deep dive with the next, reflect on this, reflect on common challenges. Then there's the lesson stage question. There's overarching questions for lesson stage. There's many things there. Hopefully, the website will give you some insights into many of these questions, not only answers, but also a place where you could also probably add to things, post-lesson stage guiding questions. So this is, the guiding questions are the amalgamation of everything on the PAL website in a really handy document that you can take away and work with one question at a time, that you could take to a PD day, that you could also perhaps work with a couple of teachers on, choose a question here and there. It's a chance to get back into that feeling of collaborating about learning. I'm going to stop sharing that and go back to the slide deck. So Monica, I'm going to go back to the slide deck. Let me see.
Let me just share that. There we go.
Oh, okay. So I was having some water. That means it's breakout room activity time. I've done a lot of talking. I've given you some sense, some grand umbrella level ideas, but I'd like you to dive into the first guiding question in the PAL resource. We'll have you work on the very first questions of our thinking routine about lesson planning for about 15 minutes. There is a link to the PAL guiding questions. I feel like the next slide is actually going to be what you're going to do. It's breakout brainstorming time for you all. You already started thinking about many of these issues. So you're going to look at a daily scenario. If you're an LBS practitioner, you know that there are things a brew before the lesson even begins. And you will be reflecting on what issues can impact the flow of a lesson before it even begins. You've already started working on that. Think of bottlenecks to flow. And what is a bottleneck really? Something or someone that slows or halts flow, movement, or progress. So if your lesson stops or, oh my goodness, is feeling laborious, it might be one of these issues. Think about on-the-ground program realities. Think about bottlenecks to flow, and maybe find ways to anticipate and make these bottlenecks more manageable. How can you make them a learning opportunity? If you get that far, you have 15 minutes to create some magic, and I will let Monica instruct you that there is also a worksheet that will be available for the breakout brainstorm. It gives you everything that was on that slide about the key question.
And just to add a few extra instructions, Olga, I know you spoke for a while, so let me just help you out. So the scenario is right there for you to consider. There's going to be a few instructions. So what we would like you to do is when we put you into breakout rooms, we want to make sure that in your group, you reflect on that scenario and other realities that you may face in your daily life. Then we will ask you to pick a note taker, timekeeper, and someone to present after we come back. We'll give you around 15 minutes. And then within the document, there's going to be a table, and I'm just going to scroll to show you that the questions are there, and there's a table broken down into breakout room numbers. So you will have different breakout rooms. Those who need ASL interpretation or just want to stay with us in the main room, just stay in the main room with our interpreter. You're going to have that activity there. But in the table, you will see you have sections where you can write your notes and information to share with us afterwards when we come back from the breakout rooms. So I'm going to put a link to this document in the chat. Make sure you open it, save it somewhere on the side, because when we go into the breakout rooms, you're going to leave our main room and will be taken to a separate breakout room. And when that happens, the chat will disappear. So this link will disappear for you. You will get a new chat that will be aligned to your breakout room only. So before you jump into the breakout room, I'm going to open those very shortly. Make sure that you have access to this Google document. Our hope is that it will allow us to kind of collect some of your feedback, ideas, notes from your discussions, so we can review them afterwards as well. I hope this makes sense. The chat is going in, or the link to the chat is going in right now. Hopefully that link works, so please let me know. I'll see if I see more participants joining the document, and that tells me you're coming in. And I'm going to open the breakout room. So have your document open, and then in our Zoom, when I open the breakout rooms, you may need to look for a link to join the breakout room. So sometimes it happens differently, but you should have a pop-up somewhere at the bottom where we have breakout rooms, and then you will be able to join the breakout rooms going in. Now, Simone and whoever else wants to stay, please stay with us in the main room. So we have our interpreter here as well. Okay. Now, if you get stuck, I will monitor this a bit. And Olga, if that's okay with you, I can help you jump, but maybe you can stay with us in the main room.
Of course.
To have a conversation with Simone and a few of those who may want to stay in here as well. I will monitor the breakout room. So if somebody gets stuck in a small group, I'll move them around as well. Okay.
Have fun, everybody.
Perfect. All right. So I can see we have many of you coming back from your groups. I hope you had good conversations and really, lots of lessons and sharing happening. Here in the main room, we really had nice conversations as well. We just have another 19 seconds before everybody comes back. Some of you may want to wrap up the conversations, but in a few seconds, really, I'm going to hand it over to Olga, and then we will kind of start the conversation. Olga actually stayed with us in the main room. So she's going to share what was discussed in that group as we begin. Okay. All right. So everybody is back. I can see the video still popping in. I also want to clarify that I opened up 7 or 8 breakout rooms, but then I noticed that some of you were not joining, so I kind of moved you around. So we kind of ended up with 4 or 5 rooms that we're working together. So I hope that's okay. I hope it gave you a chance to meet others and connect and chat with others as well. Okay. So now that we are all back and then hopefully enjoyed our conversations, we're just going to quickly summarize and have a bit of a discussion. And I'm going to hand it over to Olga again. And Olga, you were with us in the main room. So I'm just going to move to your section to share some of the reflections.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Monica. So this is where we're going to debrief. I hope you all enjoyed actually looking at some of the issues, the challenges, perhaps starting to frame them as opportunities. Not everything is an opportunity, but my goodness, positivity does go a long way when it comes to teaching and planning and just thinking on the fly in the course of a lesson as these things arise. So to share in the main room, we were in the room with the ASL interpreter as well. And some of the bottlenecks to flow were interruptions, juggling so many things, managing things, feeling, actually, there was a very good comment about the pivot to fully online was so surprising. And then changing program delivery back to face-to-face took a lot of getting adjusted to. So that adjusting from maybe program variability, delivery, that was a thing. Also engagement and desire to learn. There's resistance often from some of the adult learners, and finding a way to engage is a challenge. adapting resources for various learners, and within the ASL stream, also finding resources and taking the time to give students something to do while you scrounge around for other resources. Those were challenging things pre-lesson, even before diving into anything collaborative. That's our debrief from the main room. I look forward to hearing from somebody, one of the presenters from Breakout Room 1, some 2 to 3 key things that you might want to share with us.
A few sentences only, just to keep track of time.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll share this document with everybody so we won't miss anything.
I can go for breakout room 1. I'm Karen. I took the notes. So for the question 1, as to some of the things people come to LBS with is, I guess, just their preconceptions of what school was like, fears, anxieties, fear of judgment, just all of life situations. Some bottlenecks are the navigation and online tools, reliable devices or internet. And question 3 is, I think one thing that lots of people mentioned was pre-training of the technology before the class starts, checking for understanding, having that support before coming into the whole online system.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Breakout room 2, what stood out for you in your discussion?
Was that our breakout room, Georgina?
Yeah.
Okay, do
Yeah,
you
it
want
was,
to
yeah.
answer the first 2 questions? I can summarize the third one, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first one we had late unprepared learners, all the usual stuff, login problems, different levels of learners, learners that kind of weren't assessed, didn't have any idea of their kind of abilities. Using the phone in their own language sometimes is a bit of a problem. Well, not a problem, but something to deal with. Number 2, we came up with literal interpretations of learners not participating in the online lesson, so they're just not participating. And then somebody mentioned kind of in online classes, you have the limitations of the camera and the microphone. So in terms of kind of sharing things and showing things, it's kind of a different thing to deal with.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. Starting to solve the problem at the end. I see that you have advanced students with lower level learners kind of coming together. That's great. Breakout room 3.
So in breakout room 3, it was interesting as we were going through and answering the first few questions, we kind of started hitting the other points on some of the other questions, just having that natural discussion. But for on the ground realities, we said, like, similar to what a lot of people said, like issues like with technologies, learners like emotional state, like when they've arrived, if they're having a good day, if they're having a bad day, if there's something like on their mind, needing to also like kind of problem solve and, you know, put on a different hat in our role. Some bottlenecks, again, we talked about like building relationships is key so that learners feel that they can trust us and have those conversations with us about what they don't understand or what they need. And then for all other bottlenecks, we talked about like learners having background knowledge. So for example, language was a big one, and then skills matching the requirements of the class, especially in regards to digital literacy. And then for ways that we could anticipate these bottlenecks, we talked about doing some pre-lesson planning to help ease with the bottlenecks, a good initial assessment as well too. So like kind of going into detail, like to see where the learners are at and then meeting them there. And then having some pre-lessons, so maybe even like some discussions about like, this is what's going to be covered specifically within this course.
Thank
That's
you.
a lot. Huh.
Wow. Wow. You guys
A
are on
lot.
fire. It's hot outside, but it's hot in here too. Woo. That's great. Thank you very much, everybody. So I feel like this document already has become a dialogue in progress or an extension. What I'd like you to see, one of the resources that you will walk away with as well today. I'm going to share
Olga,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just raised my hand to add a
I'm
very
so sorry.
important, useful point to the third question, backup plans.
Absolutely,
I did
Smita.
say that I usually pair up learners at the workstations, like advanced and beginner learner, which is very helpful. But the other thing that I used in the Zoom classes was that when I have a new learner joining the program on Zoom or a beginner learner, I mean, with respect to technology, I used to send them the link to the YouTube, how to join on Zoom, what are the features, everything. I would send them the link in the text now app message and not email, because they are very new to technology. They would not check their emails. Oh, did you send it to me? I didn't see it. That was kind of a response when I sent first time. So any useful YouTube videos that are helpful with technology, I would send them in the text message, and I had a very positive and immense response to that.
Thank you. So that tool, that Text Now app that Smita just mentioned, we're gonna have a little blurb about what Smita does and how she sends YouTube videos that they get on their cell phone as a great strategy for helping with that bottleneck to flow, because they won't be if they don't check emails, they don't check emails, but they know that they'll get it in a text. Thank you for that. What I'm going to do now, very quickly, I won't go through it all, but I will share my screen now and show you the, sorry, I'm going to show you the pre-lesson companion that really is something that, sorry, just make sure I have the right. Hang on a second. Just trying to find the right screen. Okay. Are you seeing the pre-lesson companion?
Yes.
Okay. So we talked about realities, program variability, and some impacts to lesson flow. We have some considerations and reflections that our PAL working group came up with, and some tips and suggestions to transform challenges into opportunities. It is a lengthy document, and you'll get this, and you can start to see that there's been a lot of thought put into remote learners, delays, insecurities around digital format, what to consider, and how to transform those challenges. Digital devices and tech variability. I'd like to point out that if you run into frequent digital challenges that arise, you can create a shared list with your learners of typical steps to make sure devices are working for class, to problem solve with your learners and record the solutions to common problems, building a list of problem solving moments. Other bottlenecks, Wi-Fi, forgotten passwords, and login information. We have a little resource, a handy one in the website that'll be like, hey, when you forget, some ways to not forget your password, that sort of thing. That'll come in handy. Learner variability, different profiles of learners. And we reflect on knowing more and observing more about who your adult learners are, and really heading things off at the pass with those pre-lesson tasks that breakout room group 3 mentioned. More realities would be if you can see new employment, career change, like their actual profiles, helping them hone digital skills. It's a lengthy document, but let me tell you that even taking time to help learners at the beginning of the class, helping them with, let's say, some online bureaucratic thing, that's also a bottleneck. And we have some tips and suggestions in how to handle those. So I'm going to stop sharing that piece, because I can't wait for you to meet the working group, the PAL working group, and hear from them.
Here we go. Olga, we didn't discuss who's going to go first when we invite the working group members to share. We are allocated around 3 minutes, but we are, maybe 2 minutes each person, if that's okay.
Yeah.
How about you coordinate who goes first?
Okay. Now, every one of these individuals brought something that they championed, and perhaps they could speak to that. I'm going to ask Joe to speak first, just because I just saw his picture first right now on the screen, if he's around.
I'm a
Joe?
good voluntold, don't worry. So again, like it was a really great opportunity to be part of the working group for oh my goodness, I think like we're coming on like almost a year pretty soon. It was a great opportunity like to develop professionally and then hear what other colleagues in the field of adult ed had to say. And again, like Olga said, everyone kind of brought in their own like specific like strength, and then we built also on each other's strengths. So having the collaboration from different organizations, people in different roles, but all focused on supporting learners and instructors through this process. And aha moments. There's a lot of aha moments. I can think of like quite a few things that like my colleagues have shared and like within our meeting groups. I'm like, oh, I need to start implementing this into my practice. I believe something that really stood out was what John mentioned one time about doing like the pre-assessments prior to having the learner come into the course. Because sometimes, we have people, they'll register virtually. They haven't had an opportunity to come into the physical building. So we don't really know where they're at or what even sometimes they're looking for when they're coming to us for digital literacy skills. And again, it also gives us an opportunity to assess like where they are, and then we can place them accordingly to ensure that they have those supports. The different like instructional strategies like that we've talked about. Olga mentioned earlier, like the BOPS method. I'm a big fan of the BOPS method. I just find it's very like straightforward and clear cut. One of the big things I think that led to the success with this project was we didn't want it to be prescriptive. And this is like what Olga said before, is we wanted to provide like general guidelines, but not like clear-cut rules of this is how you educate, adults in digital literacy. So we still wanted to maintain that whoever was going to utilize our resource could still use their professional judgment and could kind of use this as a tool instead of a rule. And that was a lot of language that kept reoccurring throughout the project. Again, like it was broken down into like manageable chunks. So again, like going through this presentation, and then in our last final meeting, Olga got to show us some snippets of the website, and it was really interesting seeing like the amalgamation of all of our work that we've been contributing like over the past few months. Well, I guess more than a few months at this point here, which is great. Because we get to see like the fruits of our labor, essentially. It was also really great. I think everyone was very respectful of one another, and we always would uphold one another. People would make certain points, and we kind of, we build on that in order to ensure that everyone's voice is being heard, but to also appeal to different instructors who would be using this as a resource as well. And lastly, a big major shout out to Olga, like kind of as our leader, as our facilitator, who always made sure that our voices were heard, and is, I would say, like the queen of organization. I don't know how you were able to put all of our different thoughts together and really make sure that it was our voices that were being heard in this project. And I'm really excited to see how people decide to use this tool moving forward. Again, a tool, not a rule.
Excellent. Thank you. Layla, are you here?
I'm here.
Oh, welcome, my strengths-based champion.
Okay, hello everyone. And actually, it was an incredible experience for me because we were coming from very different background, very different programs. And when we get together, monthly was excellent because we were able to notice and practice all of the challenges and so many things that we shared and interact each session, each time. When I was in my classroom, I was thinking about those things that we were discussing. So it was a perfect, like monthly was a perfect phase for each session. And as Joe said, so many different aha moments. And it's like, for example, right now, I'm just thinking about each time I'm just working and practicing as a practitioner. I'm thinking about like post and pre-lesson class activities, and I'm like going back to those subjects that we discussed. Each session was a learning moments for me, and I learned a lot from my colleagues. And thank you, Olga, for preparing and making this opportunity for us, because I haven't had that type of experience to just stay on the ground realities and discussing those topics that we were working on each day, and having so many challenges, because we're adult learners in this busy world. Is like it's not easy, and purposefully and deliberately focusing on these small points was a huge experience for me. I don't want to take more time. That was like my experience here. It was technically, let me say this, it for me, it felt like piecing together and creating a beautiful quilt.
Oh, thank
When I'm
you.
going back to the website and what you shared with me, I can see that pieces of us there.
Yeah.
That's the goal. Georgina, do you have 2 minutes you could, or a minute?
Yeah,
We're getting tight here.
I feel like a lot of it has already been said, but yeah. So I like the fact that the project went the collaborating took place over a number of months, because we are sort of gradually introduced to new methodologies and ideas, and like others mentioned, I had time to kind of process it and apply, or think about it, at least in the classroom. Lots of aha moments. I really like some of the visuals that you created. Olga, just looking at slide 22, that kind of diagram about that balance for lesson flow. Like it's things that I'm aware of, but I like to have a visual is really helpful, I think, to be able to kind of reflect and move forward. Joe and I also did some focus groups with some of our students, different groups of students, so that there were, kind of a lot of aha moments there, because a lot of the things that the learners told us were things that we were kind of aware of, but they were giving their own kind of voice to it. So that was great. And then in terms of the final product, definitely for us as LBS practitioners, I like the kind of fact that we can pick, it's very comprehensive. You could use the resource fully, or you can just pick and choose the bits that you like, or the bits that you have time for. So I think it's a very usable resource, very comprehensive, but very, very user-friendly, which is great. And you definitely can see our voices, the working group voices, kind of represented in it, which is amazing. So good work,
Thank
Olga.
you. Smita.
Yes, I think most of my working group members who have become more than working group members now have spoken. So I will also summarize a few things that I felt during the group project. So it had been nearly 11 months we've been working on this project, and it had been a rewarding experience to be together into the virtual monthly meetings where we had set the group norms, and the open discussions and the turn-taking strategies have really helped us to frame and contribute to this PAL site, and our voices were always heard, and we reflected on different aspects, as others said. And Olga had used a variety of new collaborative tools, like such as live polls, Slido, Loom, along with the Google Slide with predictable questions. So in addition to contributing, we also got some training and insight into using different collaborative tools. So that was great. And the most memorable collaborative element that stood for me was that the considerations and the discussions given by the group members regarding the students and instructors' technical readiness, strengths, development, and challenges to create a blended learning lesson plan. And the third one, I would say the collaborative part was that, as Olga had put in one of the meetings, and my ideology resonates with hers regarding that when we are planning lessons, we need not just focus on what we are teaching the content, but as well how we are going to deliver the lessons, especially in terms of how the learners are interacting, whether in pairs or group, and how they are communicating. And that's the reason I probably take a lot of pair work and group works or projects with my learners. The aha moment, I would say that it was the action research project where we were trying to hear learners' voices exploring what is relevant for our students with respect to technology. And even I was very curious to know about what digital tasks do my learners do in their daily lives, the level of confidence with them, as well as what new, what you call avenues, digital avenues they want to explore. And it did give me a lot of insight, or I would say, a lot of unknown things were revealed. It helped the learners to think about the next steps and helped me to update their files and work towards their target. So it was indeed a very good, what you call, response for the action list project from my group of learners. And the last thing part, I would probably talk about how this type of collaboration can be enriching, is that this type of collaboration, what we worked on PAL, it worked for us, but I have tried and tested these all the collaborative tools with my learners by taking risks, and I have a few to share. Like I've used a Padlet as a feedback board, I've used Jamboards or Google Docs where a learner would collaborate with me to get feedback on their drafts and improve it. That's a couple of them. And I also use Google Drawings or even Google Slide template as a journal writing template, especially for a learner who is a special needs. He finds this template very useful to vent out when he cannot sit still or he cannot stay on the task for a longer period. And he is very creative in terms of adding things. And this slide allows him to put down his personal thoughts as well as add his photos, artwork, or pictures or anything. And it has been great. So I'm very confident that it will work for everyone or all the instructors and the learners in the LBS setting.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Smita. John, sorry, last but not least, is John here? No. Okay. And that is, thank you. And I have to say, for me, the collaboration with the strengths that all these folks brought, I hope when you see the website, which is to be ready in around 2 weeks, and then proofread and make sure that the video has the captions, it'll be appropriately it would be released by AlphaPlus at an appropriate moment of AlphaPlus's choosing, and you could all benefit from the multitude of resources. Thank you, everybody. It is a reflection of all these working group members and all the things that you brought up. All those attending today are hopefully addressed for you.
Thank you so much, Olga. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Thank you, everyone, for staying. Just one more minute to let you know that we are scheduling 2 more sessions, showcase sessions for the fall. We do not have the topics yet, but we do have Zoom registration links. So if you want to pre-book yourself so that you actually have that spot reserved, you can click on the links in the presentation slides. I'll also put them into the chat. But don't forget to provide your feedback. All that information we gather from you is really helpful for us, and we really appreciate your attendance, your support, your sharing, your participation in the chat. And we are really excited to share the PAL resources with you and the website when it's available. There are 2 resources we put in the chat for you, and then I will send a follow-up email with those resources as well, as well as the recording. So thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day. And we'll see you in the fall. I would like to thank you. Yeah, Smita, go ahead.
I want to thank you, Monica, Tracy, and Olga, who have been an integral part of my digital upgrading journey ever since the pandemic, August 2019 till here. I think I've come far away and still would like to continue. So I have not contributed, but just given back what I've learned from you all.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Smita. We really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. The working group, you have been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.